All right, everybody, welcome back. I am here today with my buddy Mike Lima. Mike, how are you?
Excellent,
Good to see
David.
you again,
Good
man.
to
We've
see
been
you.
running into each other at a bunch of events, but I wanted to talk to Mike because he's a guy that's been around and in this business longer than me, which is crazy because I feel like I've been in it a ridiculous amount of time. But Mike's based out of Phoenix, and literally one of the I know it's now guru capital of the world, but you were there before when all the gurus were babies running around, and I know you taught some of them. You may want to talk about that, you may not. But tell me a little bit about you, like how you got into this business, what were you doing before, and let's talk about real estate.
Right, sure thing. Well, yeah, I'm in Phoenix now, but when I first started doing some real estate, I was actually a corporate guy, and I bought my first house in 1990 and ended up selling that with seller financing.
Yeah.
And said, this is kind of a cool gig, And
So what were you doing in the corporate world?
I was the CFO. At that point, I was the CFO of a $100 million company.
Just a $100
consumer
million
products,
company.
And just kind of working the corporate life,
Yeah.
and had really no concept at that point of doing real estate full time.
So how did real estate get on your radar?
I just always enjoyed the idea of land, and I told a story earlier to the guys that my grandfather was very influential. My Italian grandfather, where I got the name Lima from, and he had come out from Italy to the United States when he was a teenager. Hit the Great Depression, arrived in New York City right as the Great Depression was hitting. Really had a tough life trying to get things organized.
Yeah.
Was able to save up some money by just working hard and earning it. Had second grade education. And you know what? He eventually saved up enough money to go and buy 40 acres out on the eastern end of Long Island when nobody was out there,
Wow.
And everyone thought he was crazy, but he was a shepherd back in Sicily.
Right.
And so from his standpoint, this was, the land was everything. And, he
Right.
just didn't like the congestion in New York City where he had to work. And so he bought this 40 acres. And next thing you know, over time, started appreciating just that compounding effect of appreciation of the land. People wanted to move out there. They started building freeways out there.
Right.
And so he was able to retire early and just kind of subdivide the land into acre parcels,
Oh.
sell off a couple parcels as he needed to, and live a very comfortable life. He actually was able to recreate his little Sicily experience by raising chickens and making cheese and
no kidding,
making his own wine and all the stuff that he loved as a kid.
Wow.
And it was just really cool. And I saw that and just saw how his second grade education, couldn't even speak English very well, broken English all through his life, couldn't read English, and yet he was able to literally become a millionaire by investing in land, sitting, waiting, and then subdividing, which again, by subdividing, you force some appreciation into that dirt, right? And broke it down into bite-sized parcels to be able to sell off to folks that build homes.
So you saw that, you've got a house, and what made you think owner financing, though, right? That's not something that comes to the front of most people's minds.
Yeah, actually, it was crazy because it wasn't even my idea. It was the guy, a buyer who was basically an investor type guy at the time. He came to me and he said, "Look, I'll buy your house. I'd love to buy your house, but I don't have a lot of cash," and kind of the same spiel that we use now. But I didn't know that back then, And I listened, I weighed it out, and I said, I didn't need all the cash right then. So
you need all the cash at once, right?
Right. Yeah. So take it, and I'm earning interest, and it's a good deal for me. So I did it, and I learned from that immediately. And I said, he just got me to do that. Work for him, work for me.
Yeah.
This is really a win-win. It's not a one-sided thing, and so all the deals that we structure, we try to make that really a win-win for both parties.
As you should, right? Like our job as investors is to make things better, not worse. So what year was this, roughly?
That was 1990 when I bought.
What was the interest
one.
rate that he gave you?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember what the rate was, but I'm sure it was in the 6 or 7% range.
Yeah, I bet it was higher than that.
Yeah,
my guess is, so because you've been around this for a long time, I've been doing it for quite a bit too. People complain about interest rates. Granted, it was awesome that we were at 2.2%, but like the average rate over the last 50 years is 7%.
Absolutely,
like we're still below the average over time.
Yeah. My first childhood home that my father built. So another story. He, my father, son of my grandfather, there. He bought 2 acres and he and my mom basically built a home. He did most of the work himself.
Yeah.
And that was a really cool story. But when that was in the mid 70s, and we know what happened in the mid 70s.
Yeah.
Inflation, gas lines. It was just a crazy time. And so his first mortgage rate was around 18%.
I remember that,
which is hard, the worst of hard money rates.
We just had Kiavi in here, and they don't even charge that. Yeah,
that's right. And so rates have changed. We've seen so much change in the industry, and wholesaling in general has just evolved so much in the last 30 years. You know?
Yeah. So interest rates, you're fine. Like, go buy houses. Don't don't worry about it. And
it just needs to become the new normal. As soon as we just accept that 3% is probably not going to happen.
Never going to happen.
Maybe never
again.
happen in our lifetimes again.
I can't see a situation where it ever would go back to that again. Hopefully you refinanced and bought whatever you could at the time, but if you didn't,
Move
buy
on.
now.
That's right. Move on. It'll still appreciate, right?
That's, I was with a client in San Jose years ago, and she took me to this local RIA, and I was there, and there was this old timer. Like, we're the old timers now. Yeah. And he was sitting on this stool, and he was talking about buying real estate and holding. And, these young kids were trying to trip him up. And, this guy with like hundreds of properties.
Right.
And they're like, well, what percentage of ARV do you buy at? He's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like 100, 110. And they were like, oh, like aghast that, somebody would say something like that. And he's like, look, if I can cash flow on it, like legitimately cash flow, I don't care what I pay for it, because I'm in this for the 30-year game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in this to get in and out in 6 months.
Right.
And that really, really stuck with me. As I started buying my own properties,
right.
Like, I'm in this for such long term. I'm projecting out on the low side 10 years, really. But I really want to buy these properties, and I want to. For me, and I don't know where you're at on rentals. I love rentals. I want to hold them forever. I just want that cash flow. I don't love to do owner financing, because sooner or later somebody's going to pay it off and that cash stops.
Right.
So, do you have rental properties?
I love it all. I have rentals.
Yeah.
I like rentals. I've got rentals in several different asset classes: industrial land, office buildings, multifamily, of course, as well, single family. But I also love paper. And I've been slowly shifting some of my, because landlording can be, tenants put it, trash, all those hassle things. And so I've been slowly shifting some of that to notes. I'm being the lender as opposed to the landlord. And so I think both are great strategies. As a lender, of course, you miss on some of the appreciation of the asset itself.
Right.
But it's a lot easier to manage.
But you wouldn't switch it all over, would you?
No, probably a blend of like almost everything, all in moderation.
Right.
A blend of everything. And you asked earlier about kind of how I got into it full time. So back then in the 90s, I was still a corporate guy and still working that job, that W-2. And so I think I didn't buy my first fix and flip until 1993. 92, 93.
That's when I graduated college.
Sorry.
I know.
You youngster.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that. I will take that compliment.
And then in 97, I bought my first auction property at literally a trustee sale. I bought 3 acres there with a little house on it, and did my first subdivision, subdivided that house off, sold it, built a house on the middle parcel, and then I still to this day own the other parcel.
Do you really?
Sitting at which I'm gonna now I'm in the process of subdividing and doing 2 or 3 new homes on that parcel.
Really?
And that's 25 years later or whatever it is,
So Mike, from the time you did your first deal, you sold it owner financing, to where you kind of went full time. Were you married, single guy, like?
So I got married in 96.
Okay, so you were a little bit established when you got married. Okay.
Yeah, definitely established, but I was out of town all the time. I was at that point as a COO of a large software development company, international company.
So you're doing real estate investing kind of on the side, and
it was purely definitely on the side, right? And then
that's a lot to juggle, man.
So I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't know like the investor game, like the things that we're doing on Investor Fuel here, and so and I was literally traveling 4 to 6 weeks at a time, different 4 or 5 countries every week or two, that type of thing. Almost a different country a night, different language, different everything. It was pretty crazy. And we've been trying to have kids for the longest time, and we had to use IVF, and we finally got pregnant at one point. And I was in Portugal, of all places, over Christmas of 2020. It'd be 2002. And it's gentleman that worked for Cisco Systems in Portugal, in Lisbon. He had shown me a version in Portuguese of Rich Dad Poor Dad. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I hadn't read it, didn't know about it, and he says, hey, you should read this. I said, I don't read Portuguese very well, and so I got back to the States, and over Christmas I got the English version of Robert Kiyosaki's book, read it, resonated with it, the quadrants, and
I'm going to tell you, like, it's the most cliche thing That's, of course, how I got started, too. And,
Yeah.
8 out of 10 people that you ever talk to are like, yeah, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
It's been so
He said
influential.
yeah. Did you see him last January at Fuel?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So he said it's like one of the most pirated books ever. Like, people just make photocopies and it just gets passed around in third world countries and all kinds of crazy stuff like that.
I'll bet. And what really hit me when I read that was the story I told earlier about my grandfather.
Yeah.
My grandfather was the rich dad.
Really?
The second grade education.
Yeah.
Didn't really know what he's doing. Made more mistakes than most of us do in a lifetime.
But he took chances.
But he took chances and he worked his butt off, and
Yeah.
he believed in the compounding effects of buying land, letting it sit until it becomes more valuable,
Right.
and then owning things. Don't lease things, own it.
Yeah.
And those are things that stay with me. And so when I read that book, I'm like, yeah, he didn't have the education, but he's the one that in the end really did a great job.
Yeah.
He's able to pass some of that down to his kids. And so and then of course I learned a little bit about it. So that's when I jumped in full time in real estate, left the corporate world.
So
And
what was
since
that
then-
transition like? Like, first of all, you're obviously working a very intensive job being a COO and a CFO, and then you're trying to do a little bit of real estate on the side. Like, that's hard. Like, and I know a lot of people watching this may be in that position where, they're trying to break into real estate and they've got their day job. Like, do you remember? Because I remember it was hard for me. Like, how did you juggle that and like kind of have a little personal life on the side too?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, because I was literally out of the country for big hunks of time. So
Yeah.
it's really, and this is really not pre-internet per se, but before MLS and the platforms were available over the internet. So I couldn't, in Spain or Portugal or Italy, I couldn't transact. There was no MLS to tap into. It was all paper.
I tell these people now, like, you kids have all the best toys.
Oh my
I was sitting here
gosh.
talking to Lou Brown a few minutes ago, like, Lou, how did you comp a property in 1990?
Sweet Lou.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah,
he's like, we went to the courthouse, and he was telling me the way he would comp is they would literally pull out the newspaper and look at similar properties for sale and what they were renting for, like the freaking newspaper.
We used to get foreclosure lists faxed to us. I mean, faxed, in that little paper.
When I was just starting, people still had fax machines in their house.
Yeah,
Crazy.
It was so different. So it wasn't as easy back then as it is now. So I didn't do a lot of deals before I went full time. But that transition was basically, once I knew I was having a baby, my first kid, it was like,
You thought that was a good time to quit your stable corporate job?
It was a good time not to be overseas and not around to be a dad,
I get
right?
it. That's true.
So if I wanted to be a dad that I wanted to be, that I thought I should be, I couldn't be out of town all the time.
Yeah. Plus,
And
93 was like, that was Gulf War. Probably not the best
Oh
time.
no, this is 2003.
Oh,
now.
2003.
Yeah,
Okay,
this is 2003
Yeah.
now. So decade later, and so I said, okay, let me see if I can do this. I had a good corporate background. We'd done some venture capital stuff. I've been involved in a lot of stuff, so I felt comfortable around contracts and things.
Yeah.
I had a different start than a lot of people that just get into real estate when they're young. They don't necessarily have that corporate background. So I felt and I had some money saved up, and I had great credit, right? So all that stuff helped me, and so I had an easier opportunity than many do.
But it's
in
still a
getting in.
leap of faith.
Oh,
like, you have to
definitely
believe in
leap
yourself,
of
and
faith.
like it's a lot.
So what I did is I went to someone in Phoenix at the time that was a wholesaler, does kind of like what I do now.
Yeah.
And I said to him, hey, look, I've got the cash and the people behind me. I can buy 25 properties in the first month, and I'll buy them from you.
That's a real first world problem
But
you got there.
gotta, well, and it wasn't my cash. I was financing a lot of it, right?
Yeah.
And I had a couple money partners as well. But I said, you can't just load me up with 25 properties without a business model. You got to show me what to do with them then, right? And so he did, and I did. I came through on my side. He came through on his side. We loaded up with 20, 25 properties right away, and he showed me what he knew at the time was lease options. So I started out in lease options and started, taking a deposit and putting people in there and doing the leases. And I thought that was okay. That was my jam.
So
and
60 days after you start, you have all these properties.
I was locked and loaded already.
Were you like, holy shit, what did I get into? What am I doing here?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And back then, I went to see every individual one myself. I mean, I was heavily involved. I was taking notes like crazy and all that stuff. Now, I mean, we can get to that in a minute, but now I don't see any of these properties.
Yeah, I know.
have no idea.
Now
But
it's funny,
in
you
some
can
ways
walk-
have more information because of the data available,
Yeah.
but yeah.
It's interesting when I started to, like, I'm measuring and I'm doing, all these things. Now I can literally walk through in like 3 minutes. I'm like, all right, this will be $30,000 bucks.
Good enough.
Yeah, good enough. Like,
that's a 30. That's a 30K, right? Give or take 3 or 5.
or
right?
10, right?
Close enough.
But
right?
I mean, it's interesting how, that risk tolerance changes and you're not as
100%.
nervous and you're like, a guesstimate is good enough. And I would never recommend that to somebody new. do not do that. Like work your
Right.
way through the process, and you've got to do the time and get the battle scars and do the work.
Absolutely. And so in that first 7 months since I've transitioned in 2003, my goal was if I can come close to replacing my current income.
Yeah.
I was making good money as a corporate officer, and I did. In 7 months, I replaced my full income of the corporate job, and that's when I realized, okay, this is for real. I can make a run at this thing, right? And then, as you know, 2004, 2005, 2006,
was
2007,
crazy.
there were some crazy times. Yeah, I remember I didn't even take vacation in 2005 because we were
buying and selling. Keep buying and selling.
So much business. It just didn't make sense. So I deferred that gratification, the vacation, because I knew what we could accomplish.
So you're married, you have a family, right, or at least one. And how does your wife react to? So I'm quitting my job, and we're going to do real estate. Surprise! But I'm going to be home all the time. And she was like, "Really?"
Yeah, she didn't like any of that.
Yeah.
No, it was we were just starting a family, so it was. She just trusted that I knew what I was doing, and I'd figure stuff out, and we did.
And that's incredibly important in a partner or a spouse to have somebody who believes in you. And I was lucky to have that too, where I believe that you're going to make the right decisions, and I'm here and we're on the journey together.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then and that journey is constantly changing, and especially in real estate.
Changing all the time.
I'd come from this corporate environment where we would literally do 5-year planning sessions, and it was we're going to be making pretty much the same products 5 years from now that we've been making the last 5 years, and so you just knew there was some stability to it. Real estate is completely different. It's literally every quarter we're kind of rewriting our throw away the old one.
That didn't work. Let's adjust. Let's pivot.
Exactly. The market changes. New tools come out. New techniques come out. And so and there's so many niches you could go into in real estate. It's so diverse. Become a quick change artist nowadays. And that's what you need to do. So that journey, what I did back then in 2003 with lease options. I almost never do a lease option anymore. I did more lease options in 2003 than I have in the last 20 years since then.
Really? I believe it. So, so at that time, was it just you, or did you have a staff, or? Yeah,
all that was just me in the first year,
Oh my God.
Until I got that proof of concept that I knew I could make this work, and this real estate was a real gig. Mm-hmm. And then I joined up with a partner, and the two of us went after it and kicked butt for the next 6 or 7 years.
Really?
And then from there, we slowly added like an assistant and a bookkeeper and things like that. But we really, I always try to keep it lean and mean. I mean, I think that's the best way. I probably have as big a team now as I ever had.
Right.
And that's about 12 people at this point.
Wow.
But we're doing deals in almost every state.
Yeah, we were talking about that, right? Like all over the country. So that's a hard decision, right? To go from kind of being the solo operator where you're like the control freak guy to making the adjustment. Oh, I have to bring in some people because I need to grow, right? Like I need to add in the bookkeeper, and the accountants and all the different people. Like, was that hard for you, or no? Because you came from corporate America. Which one?
It's still a little hard because I probably do like to understand and make sure I have my fingers on things to some extent. And I think I'm also one that I don't ask someone to do something that I haven't already done.
I get that. That's what makes you a good leader.
I needed to learn it myself, right? Yeah. I mean, it was a completely different industry from what I was doing before. So I wanted to learn. I knocked on doors. I sent mail. I knocked bandit signs. And I tell you,
so many bandit signs.
In the Phoenix desert, the ground is rock hard in the summertime. Yeah. I mean, you have to basically drill those puppies in again the stick,
Yeah.
And so I did all that stuff just so I'd learn it, understand it. Back then we used to advertise a lot in the local newspapers for you could imagine actually papers, not virtual newspapers, and for homes for sale, and so I do learn all those techniques. And then once you master them, you understand them, then I feel comfortable. Okay, now we can delegate it, right?
Yeah.
And so I went from doing those lease options to I figured, okay, if I can pull in a couple handymen and quickly clean up a property to rent it, well, then I can probably take the next stage and make it a little bit nicer and fix and flip it. And so I went from lease options to fix and flip, and then we started turning on the lead machine. We were always off market, good at off market.
Yeah.
And once we started getting more properties I could possibly fix and flip, then, okay, what did we do with the excess? We started selling them off to others. So wholesaling became a natural thing after that. So
that was back in the 2000s.
Yeah, that was all in the 2000s. And then as 2008 happened, the recession hit.
The end of the world, right?
That's what saved us and locked us through, because we had 7 or 8 deals at that point when the banks just basically shut down in 2008. We had 7 or 8 deals that were in escrow, fix and flips, so we had invested all the money into, ready to go, ready to get our payday within a couple of weeks, and all of them blew up, right? The appraisers suddenly stopped. They couldn't find value anymore. The lenders didn't want to lend, and all those had to become rentals, essentially. You know?
So, and you know, I was talking earlier today, and usually it's a way longer presentation, but nobody in that room, a handful of us understand what happened in 2009.
Right.
It was the end of the world, man. The water faucet shut off overnight. Like, it was crazy.
You know, I talk about my grandfather arriving in New York right as the Great Depression hit and what the stock market collapsed, right, in New York. Well, what we went through in 2008 and 9 was probably our lifetime version of it. And and if you're in real estate, and particularly, you know, to my belief, in real estate in Phoenix and Vegas, the Sand States, and in Florida.
I was in Florida. It was bad.
And Cali, those ones really suffered. And you know, we took. I had like 70 rentals at the time, and oh my gosh, that rental income dropped, because even rents dropped by like 50%. You couldn't rent them out for what you thought you could anymore. And so instead of making cash flow or neutral, we suddenly became negative as leases came up and expired. They were all expecting rent reductions, believe it or not. You know, it's unheard of, right? And some of the land deals that we had in place, we had some large land deals, 100 acres plus, that we were developing for home builders, and those things, the dirt in Phoenix metro area basically went to zero.
Worthless.
I mean, it literally went to zero, from being worth about $15 million at that time to zero.
So I worked for ProBuild and 84 Lumber doing sales, doors and windows, garage doors and trusses. And dude, Florida is loaded up with track builders. Dude, it just stopped.
Crickets,
like,
baby.
Dude,
crickets.
It was literally dust out there. I'd go out onto a job site like a Lennar or Pulte or America's Home, where, you know, it'd be a thousand pad site.
Yeah.
And dude, you couldn't see a worker. Like, you'd be out there for hours,
ghost town,
driving through these things where they're like, you know, 300 acres, and you couldn't find a person.
Yeah.
Like, it was bad. The last property I bought in Florida, I bought in June of 2008. You know,
good timing.
Good timing. It was so good. It was a probate deal. I bought it for $99,000. I tell people, you know, it's Florida. They're all the same, right? It wasn't a brand new house, but it, you know, older track or ranch style house.
Yeah.
1 block over, 2 blocks down, identical layout. 214 had just sold.
Whoa. You got a great deal, man.
Right? Like, isn't that like that's
you're one of the smartest people in Florida.
I was at that day. I was a very smart person.
Right.
So I kind of knew I was leaving. I knew something was happening. I didn't know exactly what it was. So I kind of putter around and I get it fixed, and I'm done in like late October, and I call my agent, and she's like, yeah, let's not put it on the market till January because you don't want a bunch of days on market. Right. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense, right? Because I'm an idiot. So she comes over in January, and she's like, it looks good. I'm like, I know. Did a great job. I know, right? And I'm like, well, what can we sell it for? She's like, yeah, probably like 142, 144. I'm like, no, Shayna. 1 block over, 2 blocks, 214. And she's like, yeah, that was June.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, that's 30% value. And she's like, yeah, that's what it is. And it did nothing but continue to drop. Like, I tell people, you know, to try to explain how bad it was like watching a fat kid chase a tennis ball down the hill, right? You couldn't catch the pricing. Like, it was falling so fast, you could not get ahead of it. It was terrible.
It was, and I think most of us thought it would only last 3 or 4 months, right? And that would straighten out, right?
Yeah. Because we've been living so high on the hog forever.
That's
like,
right.
I tell people, like, I had a full-time job when we were rehabbing, and I thought I was something. A fucking dog could have sold the shit that I was selling, right? Like, literally, Lumpy the dog could have put a sign out front and made as much money as I was making. It was no talent. We were just in an incredibly inflated market.
Yeah, you know, and that's why the humility is so important in this business, because we can all look like rock stars when the market's doing great, you know, but when the market turns, that really tells us, you know, who we are and what our capabilities are and how safe we are. Do we build that margin of error into our business, right? To be able to accommodate that, because, you know, ups and downs do happen. It's not always ups, right?
Yeah, and, you know, that was really bad in '09. This little thing that happened a couple years ago was nothing.
Exactly.
Honestly, I'm like, I see people on Facebook, it's the end of the world. I'm like, bro, go back and watch Dan Rather in 2009. We didn't think the economy would open the next day. That was bad.
And you know what? Many pieces of the economy didn't open the next day. We don't talk about that enough, but if you remember, there was a list, every week a list of bank failures. One bank taking it, and the feds have to step in and literally force another bank to come and absorb it so that the account holders would not be, would not be screwed.
Bad. People have no idea that weren't paying attention back then, but I'm like, go to YouTube and watch those news reports. It was fucking scary.
Exactly.
Like I remember sitting there at night watching the news going, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it was our Black Friday. Like,
right.
It was 100%. And, for us, we went to Chattanooga and like we thought we were going to buy properties with bank financing and like it just didn't exist. Like we had to figure something out. And that's how we fell backwards into wholesaling.
Exactly. So. And so through that really tough market in 2009, wholesaling is what got me through.
Really?
Because I couldn't fix and flip anymore because the exit strategy was so uncertain, just like it was in 2022, mid-2022 to about now. It was kind of uncertain, so you pull back on the fix and flip because you're not sure if you're going to be able to get out at the price you need to. And so my fallback has always been wholesaling to get, because wholesaling gets you through really every. Now, is it your best only strategy for 20 years? Probably not, right? But it is a good, consistent flow. And if you do that as a base, and then you add to it, you're buying holds for every 7 or 8 that you wholesale, you hold one. Maybe do some fix and flip as well if you enjoy that and you have the appetite for that. I think that's really the blend that you're looking for. Maybe some notes. I mean, there's just build a portfolio, be okay trying several different things. And if you end up with a portfolio that has some notes, some long-term rentals, some short-term rentals, you're not doing bad, right?
Yeah. That's why I always tell people, like, one good thing about investors is we can pivot pretty quick. Our businesses, our operations are small enough that, we can pivot from buy and hold to wholesale to novations to, to whatever it is. But when you work for that big company, like they weren't pivoting like that, right? Because you got 500 people or 1,000 people or whatever it is. Like you have you just can't change your business plan that quickly.
Right. Yeah, and as entrepreneurs, I think we're just we're conditioned to pivot quickly, and pivot is the right word. Yeah,
trial by trauma. We're like, there's no other option. At the time I told people I had a wife, 2 boys, and 3 fat dogs. Like I had to figure out something to, they wanted to be fed. Those kids wanted new sneakers, and the dogs love their cookies, right? So we had to figure it out somehow. So cool, man. So what does business look like for you now?
Well, it's kind of come full circle. Now I've got 2 partners I work with, and we're now doing nationwide virtual wholesaling. Wow. So a model that we could never have done even 5 years ago. Before COVID, couldn't have done it. But now with the advent of COVID, so many things are more easily, readily available, or everyone's way of thinking is a little bit different. The tools we have available are so different. We now have great tools like Investor Lift for disposition.
Investor Lift, 2 thumbs up for Rob Wensley and Investor Lift. Yeah,
we use that tool every day, and PropStream and others that, of course, the MLS data is better than ever. And especially in Phoenix, where I spend a lot of time. We have tremendous local accounting information. And so, the tools are there now that we can put it together, and we can literally now go out and where I used to have to see and measure up every little house and kind of envision if what kind of family would live here, how would I make this work. Now I never see any of the properties. It's all done virtually. We use a network of folks around the country to help us get these things done. And we find our buyers virtually and close them, easier, in some cases easier than it was in the old days. Even though we never see the properties. And so now our challenges are different types of challenges. And now our challenge is more title issues, especially when we get to Florida. Florida has a lot of.
We're going to help you with that, Mike. I keep telling you.
We're like becoming probate experts, not because we ever wanted to be.
Well, Florida is the place where people go to die. I hate to say that for all you Florida people, but if you live there,
Yeah, well, we're all on our way eventually.
I know, right? But they seem to congregate in Florida.
Florida a lot. Arizona's got quite a bit of retirement communities as well. And it seems like more and more we're finding, and at least the deals that kind of fall down through the filter to us, the ones that have the most ability to make a profit are the ones that you have to work for a little bit, and so a lot of times it requires some type of probate or some type of title.
Bro, we've got a great probate attorney in Florida that just handles Florida. I keep telling we'll hook you right up.
Absolutely.
Hannah messaged you, so you got to jump on with her. Well, dude, I appreciate you taking a couple minutes and coming over and chatting with
Always
us.
a pleasure.
I always like talking to people that have some longevity and experience in this business. And, I always try to make sure people understand, like, real estate will give you the greatest life ever. Like, I feel like it's given me a life I probably didn't even deserve. But you just can't quit, right? Pick an aspect of real estate that you like and that you enjoy and resonates with you, and go all in.
Yeah, and network with folks that are like-minded and that share. We all have different views and different goals, but find a tribe that works the way you work and that thinks the way you think. And when you do, most of us are very sharing, just like you are. You're open book, right?
I'll tell you anything.
And so
if you want to listen, man, I'll just keep talking.
So when it gets hard and you think that you're really having problems, well, come find someone, get some help. I mean, it's readily available. You just got to ask for it.
There's so much out there, especially in Guru City where you're at.
Yeah, well, I don't. And that's a four-letter word. I'm not a big fan of. I always try to shun, but I think it's overplayed. But there's just a lot of good expertise, a lot of bright people in the Phoenix area, and it's been a hotbed for success.
It used to be Tampa before that, and then it somehow migrated out there. Well, Mike, I know a lot of people are going to want to reach out. What's the best way for people to find you? Like on social media?
Yeah, social media. I'm on Facebook. I think I don't even know. I don't even know my handle on Facebook. I'm on there, but I'm not highly present there. But if you MikeLima.50, I think it is.
Yeah.
And Mike at MikeLima.com is another way. Yeah. I'm sorry, MikeLima.com, the domain is probably the best way to find me as well.
We'll track you down and we'll tag you in the notes here so people can follow you, because you're certainly a guy with a ton of experience and knowledge. And I think just following you, people are going to pick up a lot of golden nuggets and hopefully some stuff that'll help them in their business.
Fantastic.
Oh man, appreciate it. Thank you so much, dude. Good to see you too.
Yep.